This is my theory. This is my theory on how Cade achieved his immortality. Cade dies. Well, he's burning up, right? He's like, you feel me? And he lets out this psychic blast, right? He's like, he lets out this psychic blast. He goes into his, he dies. He goes into his own dimension, and he somehow acquires immortality. Gets onto the mortal plane, and able to give other people immortality. For a lot of people, they don't know how he's able to do that. They don't even because they rarely talk about it, right? They rarely talk about it. Sybil kind of speaks on it a little bit, but they rarely talk about it genuinely. If we're talking about how he got it, right? This is how I genuinely feel about how he got it. When we see 10,000 years ago in Legacies, that Lynn, right? Lynn and Ken 10,000 years ago pull up to the TVD world, and battle breaks out, war breaks out, right? It's Ken, you feel me, and his people versus Furies, right? They're going at war, wham. And in the midst of this, right, Ken is like murking a lot of humans, whatever, whoop whoop. And Lynn sees that in like another dimension, well, in another dimension, or in like the humans' afterlife, right, is limbo, and they're wandering aimlessly, like a mother and her child is wandering aimlessly after dying senselessly to Ken's war with like the Furies and the humans and stuff like that. You feel me? And so what ends up happening is she takes like those people over into their world, right? Over into their world, into their home. You feel me? Lynn does. You feel me? Ken's sister, another god, right? And so what ends up happening is that's how we get to what we know as peace. What we get to what we know as peace. You feel me? And stuff like that. Without that happening, there would be no peace, which means that the primary function of nature and the primary operation of nature is that to get basically mortals or just anyone on this mortal plane, you feel me? Like it living, breathing, you feel me? In the TVD world, once they die, they don't need to be coming back. You feel me? It's to alleviate, right? It's to like get them off the mortal plane and put them somewhere else. Get them off the mortal plane and alleviate us of that soul, of that being. You know what I mean? That is what is basically the function of nature. So the function of nature is very simple, right? It's not, oh my gosh, nature always has balance and nature this and nature that. Nature just doesn't want the world or like its world bombarded with souls. You feel me? Like overpopulated with souls, with human souls, or just like souls in general, to be honest. It has nothing to do with like consequences and stuff like that. Genuinely, I'm being honest with you. It's not like a theory here. I'm speaking fact. You feel me? As far as Cade, right? Cade realizes this, right? He has his own dimension. He says to nature, okay, cool. If I alleviate you of these souls, right? These evil souls, doesn't really matter, but these evil souls particularly, right? Woohoo. You feel me? If I alleviate the mortal plane of these evil souls, may I acquire immortality. And may I acquire immortal servants to do so as well. You feel me? Huh? Does that sound like a good bargain? Nature does it sound like a good bargain? Bargain, you feel me? Nature was like, sure, absolutely. Because nature doesn't care about people being immortal. They don't. They don't. As far as like the doppelgangers existing, after like Silas becomes immortal, right? Um, he's on a mortal plane. Doppelgangers come about to exist. They try to explain it of being like, oh my gosh, they exist because what's it called? We need a killable version of myself and Amara on the mortal plane. You feel me? That's just fact. You know what I mean? But in truth, I just feel like there. In truth, I feel like that would them being like the doppelganger people, or looking that way. As far as like, I feel like nature just added another celestial type of phenomenon onto the mortal plane, just in case we needed something like that. You feel me? Just in case we needed something. I feel me? I don't think it was like. But then again, you could say that they could have used anybody else. You feel me? instead of using Silence in Tomorrow. Although it would just be more poetic to use Silence in Tomorrow, to be honest. You dig me? But um, I guess, but I don't think that's like a consequence, to be honest, right? If you're immortal, right? If you're really immortal, right? Then and you have like a killable version of you now, right, on the mortal plane, right? I don't think that's a consequence. In fact, that's actually bringing more life onto the mortal plane. Do you dig me? Like what? If we're talking about like immortality, right, and we're talking about like the Michelson family, wouldn't they also have like this weird situation to where they all have doppelgangers too? If they were like immortal, you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't them being alive for so long? Da, da, da. But then again, even like think about it really quickly. Silas turned immortal. Kessia immediately like reverse engineered it and created the cure for immortality in that same moment. He just didn't take it. When we're talking about the Michelsons, right? They turned immortal, like real deal immortal, right? And they had the ender of themselves, right? The white oak, the wickery oak stake or the white oak stake, stuff like that. They had like this tree basically. Then they had this white oak tree that can take their life, and yet they lived for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and they plagued the earth with vampires. You know what I mean? And yet they don't have no doppelgangers. They don't have this or that. So what was the equivalent, right? Maybe the equivalent was a lesser version of vampires, right? Maybe that's the equivalent, right? A killable version of this species as compared to the original version. You know what I mean? So let me try to have that type of lenience and have that the type of lenience. Let me try to find a type of similarity between the between every species really quickly. As far as sidekicks, right? As far as sidekicks, right? We have a sidekick who turns immortal. You feel me? Of course, making a deal with nature. We have Cade, and he comes across other sidekicks. He makes them immortal, but they stay immortal for like hundreds of years. Where are their doppelgangers? You feel me? They don't. Nature doesn't require them to have doppelgangers. Nature doesn't require that of them, right? So what ends up happening is we have to really sit here and be like, if you make a deal directly with nature, right, by giving it what it wants, you feel me? By nature, like really receiving something, like in exchange, like a really equivalent exchange, you feel me? Equivalent exchange here. There is truly no consequence whatsoever for immortality. You don't need a doppelganger you don't need something killable, you feel me? Cade went thousands of years without being killable. You dig me? Real rap. He went thousands of years without ever being killable. When we're talking about um when we're talking about and he had no doppelganger, no nothing. When we're talking about Silas and Amara, they didn't do they didn't like make a deal directly with nature. You feel me? Of course, when they took the immortality elixir, nature started dying. In fact, you know what I mean. They started dying. In fact, nature started dying. In fact, so they did a whole spell version, right? So instead of like Cade and his deal with nature directly, you feel me, via like psychic dimension stuff like that, via accessing nature directly. Silas and Ketsia create this immortality elixir, right? And then what they ended up doing is by creating this immortality elixir via a spell instead of like a direct contact with nature, you feel me? You didn't get an equivalent exchange, which means that Silas and Amara has to have like this doppelganger situation going on. Well, actually, yeah, have to have this doppelganger situation going on because nature didn't really get anything out of the deal, so to speak. You feel me? So a killable version of Silas and Amara would have to do. Do you dig me? And basically, that's getting off scot free because everybody else has to die except for you. That's so goated. I ain't gonna lie. Anyways, but yeah, that's my theory, right? So like. My theory is that like nature, the functions of nature, everybody be like conventional witches, and we shouldn't do this, and we shouldn't reach for the stars and stuff like that. But you're not asking, as far as me, you feel me? I think that they're not asking the correct questions. If you ask nature the correct questions as far as what she wants, right? What do you want for me to do? Mind you, the only answer is to alleviate souls from the mortal plane. If you can create your own dimension and harbor souls within that dimension, you can ask nature for anything you want. Genuinely. Genuinely. So when Cade said, I'm gonna keep all the bad souls here and I'm gonna eat the souls and I'm gonna do this and that, you feel me? They're gonna nourish what's it called? My service immortality. You feel me? Probably my immortality. Who knows? But they're gonna nourish like the immortality and nourish my realm and nourish this and that. But I'm taking the mortal souls, you feel me? I'm taking souls from the mortal plane onto my plane, and I'm literally alleviating you of these mortal souls, right? So they're going someplace else, right? Instead of just limbo, you feel me? We have another dimension now you can take them to, right? So instead of just limbo or peace, right, we have another dimension that alleviates the souls from the mortal plane, you know what I mean, which can be my dimension, right? And in exchange, just give me immortality. Give me and my service immortality, and we're good to go. And nature did that, you know what I mean? And so if a witch, right, asks for the exact same thing, she better have like a psychic dimension or something. You dig me? Real rap. You feel me? She better have a psychic dimension. Um, a naturally forming one, right? Because if we get a prison world going, right, and all of us, and you got all these, you harboring all these souls, right? All these souls inside of a prison world, I guess. I don't know. Harboring these people or souls inside the prison world, whatever. And the prison world breaks down. Imagine nature's gonna be probably pissed off and probably take away your immortality or whatever the hell. So yeah. As far as, but if you like a psychic, right, you can naturally create your own dimension, then you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine. You'll be a-okay. You feel me? Yeah, all you gotta do is just use that dimension to harbor souls, and you shall be fine. You shall get immortality. And I feel like that's one of my greatest, outside of like realizing that like dragons existed back with Silas and Ketsi and stuff like that. I feel like this Cade, right, the way that he acquired immortality theory is like my favorite theory and my favorite realization, to be honest. I feel like it's a realization more than a theory of that, like nature, the way that nature functions, right, in the Vampire Diaries universe. Realizing the way nature functions in the Vampire Diaries universe is insane because no one else talks about it. Everyone just says consequences. No one, nature doesn't care about consequences for real, for real. You dig me? You just have to ask nature the correct questions. Otherwise, nature gotta like get they get back. You feel me? Nature gotta get they get back in the way of like, okay, I need some. You feel me? I'm living here with some. You feel me? But if you would have just alleviated the social mortal plane, you feel me? If you would have just had a dimension on standby to where you could take immortals to make where you can take mortal souls, you could have asked me for anything. You could have asked me for anything. You dig me? Real rap. You could have asked for anything. I would have given you anything, but no. You want to bring people back to life. You feel me? You want to put mortal souls back onto the mortal plane who have died. You know what I mean? Talking about who have died, you know? But yeah, so that's my theory on how Cade achieved his immortality. Subscribe for more TVDU theories, and I'm out.